replays, if you're watching our replays, just type in hashtag replay just so I know that you're watching.
Property guru George Markowski from Positive Property Solution joins us now. George, good morning to you.
How are you, George?
You've got to hang out with guys like George who know the numbers. Get the real numbers, the facts. Because I can talk to you about cash flow and all those things. George is better at that than me. The thing I'm ecstatic about George, he is a hardcore teacher. He really wants you to learn.
Okay guys, we've got 10 seconds left. Can't wait to show you a great, amazing session tonight. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, freedom fighters. How's everyone doing tonight? Hey, just say hello, type in the chat, let us know that you're here, that you're live and loud, hashtag live, that you're watching tonight's live. Christina Markowski, I'll be your host tonight, and I've got David Vegler here from our Circle of Safety. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Christina. How are you tonight?
Yeah, good, thank you. I've got little Einstein there in the back. He's helping warm the room up because it's so cold.
It's freezing here in Adelaide at the moment, isn't it? The weather's absolutely miserable, so it's a good night to be inside watching the Facebook Live.
Definitely. Snuggle up, grab, a nice glass of wine, go next to the fire, and get ready for a great session tonight.
I like it. Sounds
excellent.
Good.
So we've got some interesting news to talk about, and a lot has happened in regards to interest rates.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's certainly a hot topic at the moment, isn't it, Christina? Lots of media attention, a little bit of doom and gloom in the media, as is always the case. But
isn't it? Whenever it comes to anything, it's always doom and gloom. I mean, the reality is, if it's not going to sell, they won't write about it. And
Correct.
What sells, what gets the attention? All the negative stuff, usually. So
100%.
Definitely. Well, what's happened with the RBA? So just to put it in layman terms, I guess, the Royal Bank of Australia, they've handed down the cash rate. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So the Reserve Bank meets on a monthly basis and determines the cash rate to the banks and other financial institutions. And for the last 7 or 8 years now, rates haven't increased. And so back in May, it was the first time in a huge amount of time that the Reserve Bank decided to lift rates. And they did that again in June, but at an additional level to normal. So rates have gone up 0.25% in May, and then they've gone up a further 50 basis points or 0.5% in June, representing the first multiple rate rise in a number of years. And to be honest, it might also be the first rate rise that a lot of homeowners or investors have actually ever seen.
Yeah, right. And for those of you out there who are maybe new to our channel and are not familiar, I guess, with what we do here, I am the head property coach at Positive Property. So what I do is I hold people's hand and walk them through the investment journey and help them get the best investment properties for their portfolio. And David is our broker who's part of our Circle of Safety. So just give us a little bit of a background, just so we've got some context on, I guess, what you do and how you help our members.
Sure. So our company, Click Finance, is all about helping investors achieve their goals of trying to buy investment properties. So our niche, or what we really like to do with clients, is ensure that they have the right loan structure set up to maximize their ability to buy multiple properties over time and set themselves up for retirement. So like what you do, Christina, we hold their hand throughout the home loan process and application process, and manage all of the paperwork through to settlement and get them set up.
Fantastic. And we've got some lovely feedback here. David is a champ. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So obviously you're heavily involved when it comes to getting the loan for the investment property.
Yeah.
And that's why I guess you're more or less the expert on understanding what's happening in the world of finance, because we're talking about interest rates tonight. It's certainly a hot topic, and everyone's buzzing. And every time I meet up with another member, they're saying, interest rates are going up. So I guess in a nutshell, interest rates are going up and they have gone up. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So we're certainly in a rising interest rate market. As we noted, the rates have gone up in May and again in June. And all predictions from major banks and lending institutions is that rates are going to continue to go up, in the foreseeable future. So there's definitely some more room to move. But having said that, we are getting to a point where rates are reverting back to normality. Pre-COVID, rates were certainly at an all-time low. Then COVID hit, and the banks had to do things to ensure that people could continue to make repayments on their mortgages. But this was never going to be a sustainable environment, and so at some point in time, we all knew that rates were going to go back up again to normal levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good to put things into perspective because, yes, we can focus on what's happening now with rates are increasing, but why? We need to ask the why behind what is happening to really understand. So if we go back and we take a look at obviously COVID, what happened with COVID? They made interest rates go down.
Correct. Yeah, so basically when COVID hit, everyone was worried about spending and affordability. And so basically the government put measures in place, or the Reserve Bank reduced interest rates to ensure that, people could still continue to make mortgage payments if they lost their job or their business. And a lot of people did. Now, obviously in the 18 months since COVID had hit, inflation has increased, people's discretionary spending has gone back up, the cost of living has increased. And so now, and obviously property prices have gone through the roof over the last 2 years. And so, the Reserve Bank has to do something to try and curb the inflation and other pressures that's putting on rates. And that's why they've started to increase.
Yeah, right. So when COVID hit, how many rate cuts did we actually receive that were, I guess, handed down by the RBA?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident that rates pre-COVID were around 1%, or 1.25%, and then it dropped all the way down to 0.1% for the last number of years. So there was probably 3 or 4 rate drops at that point in time, but we were in a declining interest rate market prior to COVID anyway. So it was really just that one isolated incident that really took interest rates to a record low, which we'll obviously never see again, I don't believe.
Yeah, and the funny thing is people were freaking out when interest rates were being cut.
Correct.
So I had a lot of, warriors saying, oh, I'm worried about the rate cuts.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, but now that rates are going up, it's the same deal. They're worried about rates going up. So why would people be worried about them, I guess, being cut in the first place versus them going up?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because often when rates are cutting it's generally a sign that the economy is not performing well. People aren't spending enough money, people aren't buying property, and so there's an incentive from the Reserve Bank to get people to spend more money. So when rates are going down, people are maybe thinking that the economy is not performing as well as it should be. When in fact it's almost the opposite direction, where when rates are actually increasing, it's because people are spending too much money, or inflation is getting to a point where it's not sustainable. So there's always two sides to each story. But at the end of the day, we always talk about this between you and I, Christina, that rates are one impact or one aspect of your financial journey, and it's certainly not the top of the priorities for us when we talk to clients about what they should be looking at with investments and home loans. It's just something that we all have to contend with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point that you made there, David. And I think it's important to remember, I guess, what your priorities are when it comes to investing, because ultimately your biggest goal when you're investing should be to get an investment property. That's just a no-brainer, right? To actually get the investment, get tenants in it, get it rented out, start collecting your rent and getting your tax dollars back. So if you don't have a property, you can't obviously make any money out of property investing because you've got no property. It's pretty simple. And to get a property, you need a loan to get the property, unless you're buying it with full cash, which if you're in that position, more power to you. But a lot of people will need to go the traditional route, I think, and get a loan from the bank.
Correct.
So in saying that, obviously going through a bank that will give you a loan is the key to this. And it's not a one size fits all when it comes to which bank you should go to for your personal situation.
Yeah.
So it's never a black or white thing. and you might have to go through, a bank like Rams, which is like a second tier lender, in order to get the loan, because you might not fit the mold for like a Commonwealth Bank, which is a first tier lender. So in order to do that, you might have to pay a slightly higher interest rate.
Correct. Exactly right. It's not a one size fits all situation. And some people that are, as you said, there's full doc loans, there's low doc loans, and different types of facilities attract different interest rates. So there's always going to be variable aspects as part of your loan structure. And as you said, it's part and parcel of owning an investment property is generally having a debt portion attached to it. But as you guys know, having investment debt is not a bad thing. Investment debt provides opportunity for negative gearing. It provides opportunity for tax deductions. So it's a necessary way sometimes of creating that wealth opportunity.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, if the property you're buying is affordable, despite the interest rate, that's the most important thing. So when you're looking at buying a property, you should not be focused on the interest rate as the one most important thing. It's really a number of things that you need to consider. And what we do is we use the tool, the cash flow calculator, to put all of those variable numbers into, and then we get the outcome of how much the property is going to cost us per week, or, it might be neutral or making us money from day one. So ultimately, I guess when it comes to these rate increases, it's nothing to be worried about. All that's happening is that the market's going back up to what it was pre-COVID, essentially.
Yeah, exactly right. And increasing rates, as I said, do have some advantages to them as well. So yes, it means you're paying more interest on your mortgage, but that additional amount of interest is also a tax deduction against your taxable income. So that's one aspect. Also, given inflation has been increasing and obviously rates are following suit, that generally means that rental yields will also continue to increase as well. So we know how tight the rental market is at the moment, and there's 200 or 300 people queuing up just to get in for a rental inspection. So it provides opportunity for people to be able to increase their rental rates as well. And that offsets some of the costs of a rising interest rate market.
Yeah, definitely. And it all just comes down to what the numbers say ultimately. So if you have a higher interest rate, or you can anticipate a higher interest rate, if you plug that into your cash flow calculator and the numbers still work out, then easy peasy. That's how you make your decisions. So you really have to put your investor's hat on, like I've done tonight.
Yes.
Take your emotion out of it. Like, guys, I can't say this enough. Like, you need to be investing smarter and have the right tools and the right know-how to know how to do this stuff, because your biggest goal should be to actually get the investment property. And as long as the interest rate works, it's never going to be perfect, then that's what you should be focused on. And ultimately, that's how you get ahead. It's about making progress over perfection. And you'll never have the perfect loan, the perfect bank, or whatever. But as long as you're heading in the right direction and taking the right stepping stones to create your financial freedom, that's what it's all about.
Correct. And one of the other things we talked about is, people get concerned when rates are rising. Is my home loan or my investment loan still going to be affordable? And one of the things we always talk about with our clients is that when we work out or determine your ability to borrow money, banks will always factor in what we call an assessment rate or a buffer into your serviceability. So even though rates were at 1.99% 6 months ago, they were still factoring in interest rates at 5% in terms of could they lend you the money. So there's always this inherent risk that people feel like they're being stretched to the limits, but banks will always provision for these buffers to ensure that they're not put at risk and their clients aren't put at risk moving forward. So when people say, can I still afford this loan after interest rates going up? There's always going to be that buffer that's been factored in to ensure that this is the case.
Well, it wouldn't be a very good business model for the banks to make it so that the person they're lending money couldn't pay them back, because then that would be a lose-lose scenario. Then they wouldn't get paid back. Exactly. So it just doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. So they have to make it achievable, basically. And the banks will often, work with you to help you with that and set up yourself with that situation. But it's also having the right strategy when it comes to how you set up your loan is the big key to this. And this is what we help you with at Positive Property. So having an offset account and doing things like going interest only for your investment and looking at possibly doing a variable rate too is always a good option.
100%, and we obviously work hand in hand with you guys and your clients in terms of those loan structures and ensuring that they've got maximum flexibility and opportunity to offset rising interest rates, or have have an offset account that can reduce the amount of interest that they're paying on a mortgage. All of these things add up to having the most appropriate loan structure that's also the most cost-effective solution for you. So we always work hand in hand with you as a coach and your clients to ensure that we get that outcome.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not a one size fits all by any means. It is very much a tailored plan to your situation personally.
Yeah.
So even though we've got best principles, they might not be right for you. So it's really important to, I guess, take your situation and look at it from a holistic approach and go through all of the ins and outs of what's going to be best for your specific situation. And I'm not qualified to give financial advice, obviously. So definitely make sure you talk to the right experts in regards to that. I can only tell you what I would do as a successful property investor and what's been successful for me and my outcomes. And basically, I've got all my properties interest only. Funny enough, I did look into fixing the interest rates, which then David told me I had an aha moment last week when I was talking to him about that. So I'd like to share, I guess, my findings in that. So, David, I guess the important thing to realize about if people are looking to fix is that the banks have already factored in how to get that extra money, right?
Correct. So basically, as I said, sort of 6 months ago, banks started to already increase fixed rates well before the Reserve Bank did anything. So if we took a really quick example and said, if you're an investor at the moment, you've got an interest-only mortgage, your variable rate is probably sitting somewhere between 3.6 and 3.7% after this rate rise has just come in June. The current 2 and 3 year fixed rates are 4.8 to 5.3%. So they're well above what the current variable rate is. So you're exactly right, Christina, in saying that banks have already factored in all these additional rate rises, and people locking in these higher fixed rates are essentially paying that now before the rates have even gone up.
Yeah, look, hey, we don't have the richest banks in the world by accident. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're always going to be 10 steps ahead when it comes to this sort of stuff, because ultimately they sort of write the rules when it comes to it all.
Correct.
So they're going to figure out how to maximize their return based on what's happening.
Yeah, exactly right. And so when we've sort of calculated to say that, if you're paying 1.2 to 1.5% over what your current rate is, rates would need to rise another 5 to 7 times for you to be paying what those fixed rates are at this point in time. So that may or may not happen. Obviously, as we said, we're in a rising interest rate market. But yeah, a lot of these interest rate rises have already been factored in by the banks, and they're charging clients accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. That's an important thing to realize. And I think the best way you can take control and combat the situation is by making sure you've got your offset account or a redraw facility set up and you're using that to its maximum potential, because whatever you've got sitting in that account essentially offsets your property.
Exactly right. And one of the other really important strategies in a rising interest rate market that investors can look at doing is always, repricing their existing debts with banks, because, lenders are always keen to retain business where they can, and they'll offer discounts on existing lending to ensure that clients stay, loyal to the bank. So it's always an important time to ensure that you're constantly reviewing your mortgages to ensure you're getting the best possible opportunity with your existing lender. And if they're not prepared to come to the party, well, then it's time to switch and look at refinancing and get a better opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, David. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on our Facebook Live session here tonight. Guys, we have to run because we've got to get over to our group and our private SHERP session with our members, where we'll be going through all of this stuff and a lot more in a lot more depth. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Remember to type #live if you're watching this live, or #replay if you're catching us on the replay. That just lets us know, who's watched it tonight and who's catching up in the following days. Been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much. And we'll head on over to our group now.
Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Bye-bye.